Hello, and welcome to the Green Team of the Legendarium, the weird little spin-off podcast where patrons of the Legendarium gather together to discuss the books and topics the main crew hasn't gotten around to yet. I'm Little Red Book, and tonight I have with me Ceskykure.
Is that me? Hey, I'm here.
I can't pronounce it. Sorry. And Starkast.
Hi.
Green Team did a month of short stories for May this year. Before we get started, what do you think about short stories versus novels? What are just preferences, or what do you appreciate about one over the other?
Who wants to start?
Star, you get a start.
Okay, the one who asks. I have to say, because of the short story month, I really learned to appreciate short stories and short fiction in general. Right now, I read a lot more short fiction than books, to be honest.
Okay. Chesky?
I like novels a little more just because I like seeing more of the books that I read. Usually I'm always wanting more, but I appreciate a good short story that tells a lot of story in a small amount. So I still like them. I just like novels a little more, I think.
I think that I don't have a preference either way. They just fit different spots in my life. Does that make sense? Like, after I read one of Brandon Sanderson's Doorstoppers, it's nice to have a couple short stories. The nice thing about a collection of short stories, it's really nice that I can buy it or borrow it, and I can read a couple and then set it down, and then 2 months later go back and pick it back up again. And you can't really do that with some of the bigger fantasy novels because you forget who everybody is.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot tougher.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing is I like about short stories is there are a lot more from the same author if there's short story authors, because then you have a lot more to read in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I prefer short story collections that are by a single author versus the collections.
Yes.
Although having a collection of a bunch of different authors, sometimes you find, oh, I've never read this author before. Maybe I really like the story. Maybe I should pick up the novel. There is... Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, just a collection of short stories are horrible for my to-be-read list. It's explosive growth whenever I read an anthology.
Yeah, well, anthologies, the bad thing about them is that it's very hit and miss.
Yes.
You'll have like 3 really big names that write fabulous stories, and then you have some names that aren't as big that also write good stories, and then you have like just a piece of crap in the middle of it. I mean, the last anthology I read was Rogues, and it was edited by Neil Gaiman and J.R.R. Martin. And it was like there were like 4 or 5 of the stories I just didn't even finish. I'm like, I don't care about this story. It's dumb. It's bad.
So I have to say, I found the Uncanny magazine. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah.
And I don't have the editors right now in my head. Their collections of short stories are really, really excellent. I read 3 magazines this month, and I all really enjoyed them. And I didn't even DNF one short story.
Oh, well, that's awesome. That's great. One of the other things I think is really interesting is when you read an author's short story versus his or her longer fiction. It's really interesting to see, like, some stories or some authors are just nail short stories, and their novels are have issues, and others just do way, way better writing a novel. So I would say Jim Butcher writes way better short stories than he writes novels, and I'm a Butcher fan. So don't come yell at me on Discord. I quite like Dresden. I'm just saying he nails his short stories every single time. It's just interesting. Okay.
I have one author. I don't yet know how well her books are, but her novellas and short stories both on the same level. It's Aliette Baudard.
Okay, so we are going to get started. We each picked a short story to discuss. The 3 stories are The Bridge of Crows by Jie Yang.
Sure, G Yang, I think.
Okay. From The Mythic Dream, A Tale of Ash in 7 Birds by
Amal El-Mahtar.
from The Djinn Falls in Love, and A Study in Emerald by Neil Gaiman from Fragile Things. Spoilers for all of our stories right up front. These are very short stories, and so they're hard to talk about without spoilers. The timestamps will be provided by me. Chesky, would you like to go first?
Sure. I will start. I chose The Bridge of Crows by Ji Yang from the Mythic Dream, which was an anthology just all about fables and myths. And so this story is a retelling of the cowherd and the weaver girl. Now, I don't know that story at all, so I kind of went into this one blind. But this story starts with a frame story where you have some birds or some beings talking, and they are gathering around a fire and they are telling a camp story. And it starts with this one girl, and she is going on a journey. She has to journey to find this person who can help her with her problem. And she describes this desolate landscape. And she's like, the land takes your memories, and then your form, and then your name. And then as she's climbing up the mountain to get to the witch, she's blocked 3 times by these giant bird-like creatures, right? The first time they ask for food, and she gives them her food. And then the second time they ask for knowledge or their map, and she gives it to them because she figures I'll just come back the way I came. And then the next time they ask for her name or her story, and she gives them her name, and then is able to goes up, meets the witch, says, I don't know who I am or what I'm doing here, but I have a story. Tells the story of some fairies. And it's an interesting thing because it's like there's fairies in space, and they play around with some astronauts, and one of them is going to die and just be lost to the void. And then they save him. And then it turns out the girl is our fairy and not our human, which I kind of thought was a flip I wasn't prepared for.
Yeah, it was a fun twist.
And then the witch says, there's 2 sides to every story. I can't help you because you've told me your story, but it could be, it could be a different way. She goes back down, and it turns out the corvids or the bird people she helped out, they're back and they're going to come help her finish her task. Did I miss anything important?
So,
all right.
I think that was the gist of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, there's several interesting things about this story. I was really confused. Are these fairies or are they aliens?
Yeah,
it says fairies, but they easily could be aliens. I mean,
I think it was aliens because in the beginning it already said that not everything is the truth. Some of the things are changed.
Right.
There is a quote in the beginning that talks about that.
Mm-hmm.
And these also seem to be interdimensional beings. Like they seem to live in another dimension, but they come and screw with us.
Well, I mean, that's just like fairies in any kind of literature, though. Like the fairies, they do what they want. They show up, they cause mischief, they leave without consequences. Except for this time where the fairy kind of falls in love with the human and, goes on for that. So first, I had a couple questions for you guys. Did you like the frame story? Was it worth it? Did it really not matter at all? It starts with, them telling a story and then finishing the story and saying, here we go to war. Do you like frame stories in general?
I do like frame stories. I don't know how much the framing actually did for this particular story. Not that I don't have a problem with it. That's not what I'm saying. It's like some stories, the framing is very important. And in this case, I don't think it necessarily was.
Yeah.
But it didn't distract. Sorry, Star.
And no, it's okay. I only wanted to say that I felt the same way. If done really good, I like frame stories. In this case, it felt like it didn't do anything to the story really. There was this one twist with that the people were the bird creatures, but I kind of expected more. Like you could kind of see it coming.
Because that's the twist, is that the COVIDs are actually fairies that rebelled, right? Something like that.
They were part of the war that they had previously.
Right.
Not necessarily that they were the other things. So, all right.
What did you?
Another question I had for you guys is
wait. What did you think?
What did I think? I like the frame story. I mean, it was like I agree with you guys. It wasn't anything exceptional, but I thought it was a better starting place than just saying like, here's this random girl who's walking up the mountain. We have no idea who, why, or where until we get to the middle of the story. So it provides a good starting point, saying like, let me tell you a story, kind of like a campfire setting, and then that allows the narrator to be like, okay, I'm not going to tell you why she's going up the mountain until she's already up the mountain, basically. And that works for a campfire type story. It doesn't necessarily work for a regular story. Right?
I think it would be really cool to hear this as an audiobook or to have it really told in person. I can really imagine that.
Interestingly, I actually read this. I did not listen to it on audiobook.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy. Now yeah.
But it would have been good to hear it read for sure.
What did you guys think about the two truths to every story? Yeah, and the example they give is there's the fairy's truth that, I saved this person and I keep them locked up so they're protected and they're safe and I love them. And the human side of that where like I've been kidnapped, they say they love me, but I can't leave. I want to explore. I mean, how did you guys feel about that element? Just the two sides to every story.
Do we know that this was really the other side, or was it just a possibility?
It's just a possibility, it says. I was just talking about in general, like that two-sided thing is more.
Okay. Yeah. No, I really like that this was brought up. Science fiction fantasy has a relationship with that's not a pun intended, but yeah, it has a relationship with tumultuous or toxic relationships between characters. So I like that it was brought up. Hey, maybe this is a toxic relationship. Think for yourself. Is this really okay?
Mm-hmm.
So there's two things I like about it. Expanding a little bit on what Star says is that I wouldn't say it's an abusive relationship, but like you never think that you're in the wrong when you're in a relationship.
Mm.
And it kind of explores that. But also this is really true. Like my sister and I will talk about an event that happened and we have two completely different stories about it. Because just our different perspective. And somewhere in the middle probably is the truth. But I'll be like, don't you remember when mom said this and that when you did this? And she's like, no, she said this and that. And it's interesting. It's a real thing that happens in life. Memory is fallible and it changes. Our memories change over time.
People remember things very differently from each other.
Yeah.
Or even pick up things very differently. I had the experience in the last months very often that somebody close to me misunderstood a lot of things other people said. Said it, for example, in a way to help them or to point something out, and those people thought they would help my family member that was the word. But my family member took it as belittling.
Right. Took it in like the worst light possible or whatever. And you were like,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that happens a lot.
That's true. I guess the only other thing I really had to talk about it with this one is just she sacrifices and gives to these other people, and by doing that helps herself in the end, right? Did you guys feel like that worked? Does it work? Was it, what do you think? I liked it, just straight up.
After reading this, I almost wished that I had picked Instructions, which is also in Fragile Things. It's a very classic fairy tale thing. And it does work. You help somebody and they help you. It's like, I mean, that's how we live in a society.
I have a mixed opinion about this. Like in the story itself, it works. I would think this is kind of a dangerous method that if you say when you sacrifice yourself for somebody else, it will help you. I think this can go really quickly wrong.
Right.
Like,
I mean, there's
like there are points of no return.
I mean, definitely you wouldn't want to be in the position where every single relationship you have is transactional. That would be bad. I think it's a balance, but there is definitely a need to give of yourself in a relationship as well, and not just expect them to. I don't know. I'm not saying this exactly how I want to, but
it's hard to explain it because it's not really a thing you can explain. It's more like a thing you have to trust your gut or your heart or your mind or whatever in that moment.
Yeah. So as a mom, I gave up a lot for my kids. Not like I'm not trying to make myself. You just do. You give up time. I mean, you know this, Chesky, right? You give up time. You give up energy. You could be reading the cool new book, but instead you're reading Cat in the Hat for the 15th time or the 20th time. So that's part of it. That is an important part of relationships, but also it can go too far, for sure.
Like I think it can go too far when in a relationship only one person is constantly sacrificing things and the other one just takes it and doesn't acknowledge it or try to also sacrifice things for the other one. Like it's a balance between people, I would say.
Yeah, it's definitely something that you have to learn and negotiate through. Negotiate in the senses of each relationship. You have to learn and understand what your relationship to that person really is. I don't know, Chesky, do you have thoughts?
My thoughts are that, sacrificing to help others is usually a good choice. That's kind of what the point of the story is. It's not necessarily sacrificing in a relationship. It's sacrificing even for people you don't know. I mean, she's willing to give the bird people, the people who are blocking her way, the precious things that she has to survive: her food, her way home, and then her name or sense of identity. And I'm not saying that we have to give everything to people who need help, but I think that good deeds come around, basically. She does a good thing, it comes back to her. That's kind of what I'm saying is we're all nicer to each other, things would be better.
Yeah.
So she's not just giving the thing up for herself, she's also giving it up for her lover. And when she's confronted with the final bird before she gets to the witch, and her name was not as important as her purpose. but things need names to keep their shape in mind. So let's say, oh, wait, no, this is not the right one. Oh, shoot. Yeah, but
I thought that was going well. So, I mean.
no, this isn't the right one. But she gives up her name because it's more important for her to give up her name than to give up her story, because she has to tell her story in order to get help for her lover. And I just thought that was really cool. Unfortunately, that was not the right
good, yeah.
So that's all I have to say.
I mean, that's all I pretty much had to say as well. So unless you guys had anything else you wanted to bring up really
real quick,
exciting about it.
I do. Why do we retell the same stories over and over again? What do you think?
I mean, if you boil stories down to the very base, they're all pretty much the same. So I think it's...
But there's certain stories that are memeable, I guess. I don't want to use
memeable.
That one. Right. But, like there's a lot of stories that kind of have the same, they're throughout cultures. Little Red Riding Hood is one, Cinderella is another. And this story, like journeying to give things up, this type of story is very common. What do these stories say about us as people, as human beings? And when not me and you all personally.
This is hard. Didn't we have a discussion about this yesterday?
We might have. I wasn't paying attention to Discord yesterday.
I was asleep at that time. I only saw it a little bit today.
I think the similar stories get retold often because they have good lessons in them. And so if you have the same basic lessons or like reasons for telling the story, then it eventually, you get used to that more. And that's why they pop up so often or so frequently.
And I agree with that. I also think they help you cope with the human condition. It gives meaning when you come up against something that you're struggling with. And these are just common struggles that all people have. Which is why I like fairy tales. I didn't even think of fairy tale.
Which is normal, right? Like,
right.
But I think also at least in Germany, it's because they are told to the children to teach them things. When coming into adulthood, a lot of people don't listen to fairy tales anymore. In older generations in Germany, every Sunday there is this like almost ritual of watching or hearing a fairy tale like Cinderella or Snow White, whatever is just on the TV.
Right. Okay, Star, you're up.
Yay! Oh God, I am a bit nervous.
Don't be nervous. You'll be fine.
It's just my short story is unusual.
It is
very
unusual.
Real and great. I loved it.
Oh, I loved it too. So, as you already know, my chosen short story is A Tale of Ash and Seven Birds by Amal El-Mahtar. Amal is a Canadian poet and fiction writer, probably best known for her and Max Gladstone's novella This Is How You Lose the Time War. I chose this short story because of two reasons. The first one is because I wanted to talk about short stories with an unusual storytelling and writing style. And A Tale of Ash and Seven Birds is a perfect example for that. It's also the reason it's basically impossible to sum it up in plot-wise.
Yeah,
like it's hard. It's also because of that reason that it's a question later on. So I'm skipping that for now.
Okay.
Because I think everything is dependent on the reader's own perspective and interpretation of the short story. As its themes are buried under a heap of prose and a thick layer of metaphors, by also being divided into 7 parts, because it's not complicated enough. The second reason I chose it is because I felt weirdly drawn to the short story. To my 2 lovely co-hosts, I only read it once at that time, and spoiler alert, I didn't know anything. I did not understand the short story in the least. And I don't even know really what I thought about the short story at first, but whatever it was trash. And now I just can think about it without thinking about its themes and how I relate to those 7 birds. Now that I have more than enough introduced the short story, my first question: what were your thoughts when reading it for the first time? What were your thoughts when rereading it? And did you notice any themes? Who wants to go?
I can go. Because I'm already going.
Yeah.
First of all, I loved it the first time I read it. So I was really surprised when you said that you thought it was trash, but I can understand that.
I didn't
It's
think
definitely
it was trash. My thoughts about it, like what I
your
thought
thoughts
it
were
was
trash.
about.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
I'm generally speaking not super into surreal fiction, but the author does it very well.
Yes.
I like one of the things that struck me, especially on my second reread, but I noticed it on the first reread, is that at the very beginning, they're saying we. And then the Wizard Nation invites them in, and it's you through all the 7 birds. And then when they become the Phoenix, it's we again. So I just thought that was really interesting. I'm not saying I have any special insight onto what that means, but I thought
I have a theory.
okay.
Is that all you wanted to say?
For right now. I'm sure
Sure.
I'll think of more dumb things to say. That's my brand.
Yeah, that's very true. So the first time I read it, I was like, what the heck did Starkast just have me read? Like, I knew he liked weird books, but this one's just extra weird. But I did enjoy it. I reread it another time, and it's very short, so it's not like hard to reread. I liked it. I liked the way it goes. I kind of feel like, I don't know if are we okay to just like talk about things we thought about it now, or you want to wait?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We can talk about.
So I like that in my mind, this is the order of the birds that they transform to. I think in my mind, they start as a phoenix, right? Then they go to a sparrow, and then a crow, and then a cormorant, and then a swallow, a hummingbird, the great horned owl, and then the phoenix again. And so I like that, they were defeated by the Wizard Nation, and that's all we know. And so they became a sparrow, and they just tried to like live their life. They would try to be unobtrusive and small, and that didn't work. So then they went to become the crow, and they're like, well, maybe if we talk more, they'll understand us, and then that didn't work. And so they go to a cormorant. Okay, we'll just go off way away and do our own thing. That didn't work. So then they're like, okay, well, I'm going to be a swallow. Like, I'll be so fast, nobody will be able to catch me.
That's
that
the hummingbird.
Didn't work.
Sorry.
What?
That's the hummingbird.
No, the hummingbird is the beauty.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you're right.
So the swallow, there's feet, and they're like, okay, that didn't work. Like, okay, I'm going to be the hummingbird. And they're like, even as like the beautiful thing that I thought they were liking me for, they still got me. They still poisoned me. They stopped me. And I was like, well, I'm going to become a great horned owl. I'm going to be so strong and so powerful, nobody could affect me. And then in the great horned owl one, they actually aren't attacked at all by the Wizard Nation. And then they choose to become the Phoenix again, right? They rise as the Phoenix. But I checked it out, in every story, there's always a mention in every bird, there's always a mention of fire or ash or sparks. And so you get that theme going through the whole thing. And I kind of was like, this is very similar to like the cycle of abuse, which I mean is kind of a weird thing where it's just like you are beaten by somebody, and in the beginning they're like, I want to be subservient. I don't want to be attacked. I'm going to do my best to make it. Oh, it's my fault. I chose the wrong form. And they do that over and again. And then they become the great horned owl. And they're like, now I'm the one in charge. Nobody's hurting me. And if I happen to kill those other birds, that's their fault. Right. And then, of course, it breaks the cycle by going back to being a phoenix and being like, no, I am me. Right. I like that.
One of the things that kind of struck me about this, they also always mention how they raise their young in every single story.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Also, I just slipped in the German for the first word. As I said, I can't really remember what I first thought about the short story. And I think I was just in equal measures awed and confused. And I didn't understand it at the time, why I was drawn to it. But when I read it the second time, it dawned on me that it was really similar to things I read at the time. Like I researched at the time a lot about history of Germany, or history of LGBTQ folks, what all happened, and they were really really similar to the short story here, and because of that, it dawned on me that maybe it's because the story is about oppression. As you said, Ceskykure and Ella a little bit talked about how it starts off with we. And I thought about that maybe it symbolizes like a group of people, like shapeshifters fleeing the country or like whatever, and coming to this new nation, hoping to be helped, but that they are pushed away. And I thought about how those 7 birds are different ways to deal with oppression, like different people. And it can also be a cycle, like we see it from one point of view, but it also can be you are stuck as one bird. Like there are people who are successful at being, for example, a great horned owl, as painful that probably is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that were my thoughts about it.
Okay, yeah, I
thought it was about colonialism, but
I thought it was. Yeah, I don't know. I just conquest and it starts with a war that you don't see, so it's kind of.
So the other writer was also a beautiful writer, but I'm going to read the last line in the book because I just think that the writing is stunning. Okay. We may fall as cinders scattered on the wind. We may fall as leaves, a bruising brightness, or we may not. Death is a memory we keep around the broken space of our heart, and there is always room left over. And it reads like she writes, you said she was a poet. She writes like a poet.
Yes.
She actually, this is on the same thing of poetry. There's a style of writing that I know a little bit about called a chiasmus. It's basically you start with something and then you end with it. And that last line is in the very beginning as well. The ash settling of the sparks, or if you read it again, I get that exactly. But it's in the very beginning, just changed a little bit. So it was a perfect thing right like that. So
I didn't notice that. So, next question. The word building and the plot are very vague. Why do you think it was written this way? What could you piece together from the world, and did it enhance or hinder the story and its themes?
So this is like. This is why I prefer novels. It's like I don't need any more information to have a good story here. But would I have loved to know why the Wizard Nation was after them so much? Yes. Would I have loved to know why they kept flying or kept doing what they did or how they shapeshifted? Yes. But it didn't matter, right? It's not the point of the story.
Mhm.
And so it works very well. And I like the way it was written, but I also am like, I want more. I want all the details. I want to know everything. And that's just not how it works, right? So that's my thoughts on that.
It was intentionally vague because this is surreal fiction. It's supposed to be surreal, which means that you bring to it your own, much more than with a normal novel or short story. You bring your own experiences, like what you're going and place it on the literature. So it can mean a lot of different things. And I bet if I read this book or this story like 2 years from now, I'd have a completely different reaction to it. And it's meant to be like that.
And I really loved that about it. Like I loved like piecing together the tidbits, the tiny tidbits. For example, I was so excited when I pieced it together that maybe there could be shapeshifters. Like this idea, I like this idea so much that there could be shapeshifters. Like a Little Red Book just said, that you can piece it together for yourself. It's a little bit like a Lego play box. You have your pieces and you build upon it or build with it. Yeah. So I have one more question. As the story deals with a lot of birds and their attributes, why do you think Amal specifically used birds as the symbolism? Do you relate to any of the birds?
It is interesting that we have 2 stories with bird things in them. I think she used birds because birds. Well, I think she used birds in part because of the phoenix that she starts with, and that's a pretty wide known myth.
Yeah,
and that's why she used birds. I also think that birds have a huge number of survival strategies, and so she was able to use different bird survival strategies for different things. Like the cormorant lives out on an island and actually builds an island. And then the sparrow or the swallow lives in the barns of the Wizard Nation. And I think that that's probably why she used birds. And did I relate to any of the birds? No, not particularly.
No, I don't think I related to very many birds either. But I think she used birds because they fit with the story. I don't know if she'd chosen dogs, that would have been very different. I think birds really fits the feelings that she was trying to get out as well.
And dogs wouldn't have worked at all because of what she was trying to convey, because it was oppositional, and dogs are not oppositional to people.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm agreeing. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like it does. Yeah, it's not.
I think she also used birds because they symbolize freedom, and you have this kind of contrast between freedom and being not per se being in a cage, but it's similar. I think
being able to fly and that sort of thing. Well, yeah, no, I see that too.
Yes. Ceskykure, did you relate to any of the birds?
I would love to say that I was the great horned owl, but I'm probably not.
I'm sorry, you were
or
definitely
the phoenix. I know I'm not. I know because the great horned owl is very merciless and cruel, and that's definitely not me. I'm not sure who I would be. The sparrow or the crow, most likely.
I would probably be the crow.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
I personally hope I'm not a owl, because I think for what it symbolizes me is just like someone who how could I explain it the best? Someone who goes away from for example, for their family, and then starts to feed upon their own family. That is kind of what the owl symbolizes for me. And I think the owl is kind of the most heartbreaking and sad of the birds for me, because they twisted themselves so much, and I can relate a lot more to the first bird. But wait, it was the
Sparrow?
sparrow. Yeah, I think it was the sparrow. That was the third bird. Like, I reread it just yesterday and thought, like, I'm really between like the moment from sparrow to crow. I feel like, because that felt really like, oh my, that's really me. Like that one sentence. I could kind of relate to that.
Have either of you read A Study in Scarlet specifically,
Nope,
or H.P. Lovecraft in general, or American Gods?
nothing.
I've read American Gods, and I've read a little bit of Sherlock Holmes, but not A Study in Emerald or A Study in Scarlet.
That's the very first Sherlock Holmes book, by the way. First
Maybe
story.
I have then, and I just don't remember
I
it.
don't know. Anyway, but you said that it was really interesting because you said in the Discord, this is horror to me, and I was like, this isn't horror.
Well, I'd like to clarify that a little bit. That's all.
I know. That's fair. I'll let you. What I found out is that he was specifically trying to marry H.P. Lovecraft with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Like, that was his goal for this story. So you're right, it is horror.
Yeah. No, it's when I say that this book is horror, I don't mean like a jump scare or that you're supposed to be like incredibly like scared when you're reading it, but just like the atmosphere that the book has as you're reading it. And we said spoiler, so it's okay. Like the green blood, and then we meet the queen, and it's this otherworldly being, and the moon is all red, and it's way closer, and just like the atmosphere of the book is just like nothing is right, nothing is the way it's supposed to be or the way you know it is, and so it just puts you on. It can just put you on edge a little bit, but not in like a bad way. I think it just enhances it because you're like, oh, what's going to be the next thing that's wrong with this world? Green blood, that's weird. And then you're like, oh, and the queen is this, Cthulhuan beast type thing. You're like, oh, this is like, so that's the horror that I would be like feeling is more what I was thinking.
What do you think, Star? Do you have an opinion about it being horror?
It's hard for me because every time something is supposed to be horror, I'm like, okay, I can see it. I wasn't scared, but I can see it. I never have really opinions about it.
Okay.
Well, like I don't think it's meant to scare you, just put you off a little bit.
Really, yeah. H.P. Lovecraft, when you read anything by him, most of it is not scary. But like you said, it puts you on edge. You get this uneasy, creepy feeling. And so the reason why I bring up American Gods and the basic premise, Star, is that we create gods by believing in them, is because he actually talks about how what's happened in this world is that the gods were put away. They were shoved out of our world, and then they basically come back to take over and take us back over control.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that was a really cool part of the story. And they're like, you ignored us and you can't ignore us anymore. And we're going to marry your people and be really creepy and weird.
And control you and do everything, yeah.
And make you sacrifice to us again. Because you stop. So it's kind of like the gods are mad that we ignored them, basically. And I just thought that was a cool aspect. And it made me think a little bit about American Gods. So, a brief recap. This is a retelling of A Study in Scarlet. Gaiman takes the frame of the story, but recasts Sherlock and Watson as unnamed characters and Queen Victoria as an ancient god that arose from the deep to reclaim dominance over mankind. Interestingly, all the other characters are the same. Her nephew is murdered, and through logic, our unnamed detective determines it was carried out by a resistance movement headed by, what you find out at the end of the story, the real, our world, Sherlock Holmes and Watson. They remain uncaptured. So, what did you like or dislike about this story?
Can I first talk about the twist about it?
Talk about the what now?
The
Go ahead.
twist.
Yeah.
Yeah, because funnily, I kinda saw it coming. Some pages before, I thought to myself, Sherlock is kinda behaving weird. His philosophy kinda seems off to me. I haven't read Sherlock Holmes, the original Sherlock Holmes, but I have read quite a few retellings of Sherlock Holmes, which is kinda ironic. So I already thought it's weird that he kinda behaves differently than in all the other retellings I have read. And when the reveal came, I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. And I was going to say, like, one of the reasons why I kind of think that this is Moriarty is because in the beginning you're led to believe, or like, you're not led to believe, but you're following such a smart character. You're like, oh, this is obviously Sherlock Holmes because you know it's a Sherlock Holmes retelling, right? And so you're like, oh, I'm following somebody really smart. That's got to be Sherlock Holmes. Then you see the reveal, oh, it's not Sherlock Holmes. And you're like, well, who else is really smart? It's usually his nemesis, which he is Sherlock Holmes' nemesis by the end. And so it's got to be Moriarty. And you can't convince me it's not, Red.
I'm sorry, Moriarty does not have a sidekick.
But he could. There's no reason he can't have a sidekick.
He's an antisocial sociopath.
In a world of monsters and Cthulhian mythos, it doesn't track. Like, you can have a sidekick.
You could say that Sherlock Holmes is also an antisocial sociopath.
Yeah, if he has a sidekick, so there's really no point. There's no denying it.
I think we're in a different dimension.
There's something I just remembered. I wanted to talk about it, but I forgot. But now I remembered.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's really important. Am I the only one that thinks that we just call him Moriarty now? I don't care. Am I the only one who thinks that Moriarty is one of the old ones?
Yes.
Yeah, because he's pretty clearly shown not to be an old one, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. He's like, a worshiper of the old ones. Is what he is.
No, because it was said in I don't know when that unnamed character, our narrator, talked about how he shouldn't be surprised that he's really good at disguises. That he walked in as totally different people, walked in his room for 5 minutes and came out as Moriarty again in like almost no time at all. And I was like, oh, old one is here?
No, I just chalked that up to a Sherlock Holmes reference because he's always just doing disguises in Sherlock Holmes stories.
Okay. Yeah, that's like a feature that he does that. He'll like walk up and he'll like, Watson, meet me at on wherever, and then he'll show up as an old lady and they'll whip off his hat. Kind of like, have you read Mistborn Second Era?
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of like Wayne, but not funny.
Okay.
Of course, many people would tell me that Wayne is not funny as well, but I disagree. He's Bugs Bunny.
And the other thing that bugged me was the theater pieces. Did they reference something? Because I found it odd that the that were explained so much.
You're talking about the resistance movement?
No, they were in the theater.
Oh, the theater.
Yeah, and there were three pieces.
Right. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know either.
Except that if I remember correctly, there is a scene in a theater in A Study in Scarlet.
I was
I
going to say
remember.
it
Okay.
plays really well
Yeah.
to the Sherlock Holmes: A Study in Scarlet. From what I know of it, aside from the twist about it. So other than that, it's pretty same beats kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's a little shorter, but yeah, it's almost the exact same beats. That's what I'm saying. So if you read a Study in Scarlet, it's so weird to read this story because it follows along the Study in Scarlet, except it's Emerald, and I mean even like what's his face, the lieutenant, he's a character in Sherlock Holmes. Like all of the characters are the same. It's like they all line up.
Now that I derailed the convo, back on the track. So what
did
we
you
liked
like
and disliked.
Did you like it or dislike it?
I enjoyed it, but it wasn't my favorite story. Like I think the thing that I disliked were the epigraphs. I completely didn't understand them.
Trying to remember because I was thinking about this and then I forgot to write a note about it.
I looked up some of the epigraphs and they really do just look like newspaper advertisements, Are you dead or like dying? Like take our pills and you'll be better. Or like have some Jekyll and Mr. Hyde powder, release your inner self. So just kind of more hints at the fantastical versus the regular.
I agree. I don't think you're meant to take a deeper meaning. I think they're flavor. They're mood setting. Okay. And they're supposed to be kind of funny.
Yeah, and they are. The ones I read were pretty funny.
Yeah. Like I said, I forgot to write. I wanted to write a couple down and talk about them, but I forgot to do that because once again, I am bad at my job.
I did understand one, and the one that I did understand, I thought was kind of funny. The Jekyll and Hyde was funny, but I also only understood that one because my school tracked me to a Jekyll and Hyde theater piece.
I think it kind of plays the same role, again referencing Mistborn era too. The ads.
The broadsheets do,
the broadsheets, yeah. And some of like the radiation pills wasn't one that an ad wasn't there an ad for radiation pills or something? I mean, like that's a thing that people actually took radiation pills at one point.
What?
Yes, no. Yes, it's a thing that happened. It was most of the references were things that really were things.
Yeah,
in one form or another. But yeah, in fact, shoe stores used to have X-ray machines in it, and you would stick your feet in the shoes, the X-ray machine, to see if they fit right, and you would like look down, and meanwhile your eyes are getting irradiated, and your shoes are.
Yeah, we weren't very smart back then.
No, we weren't.
Yeah. But they didn't know at the time. They didn't know.
Yeah,
I hope.
I don't think so. I have several stories I can tell you about radiation in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I liked this story, but I feel like in my mind it falls to the same problem that I have with other Sherlock Holmes books that I've read, where there's a mystery, you as the reader have no idea what's going on, and then it's solved. And then there's not much of a real story. Like there is, but there isn't. Like if you read a lot of Sherlock Holmes, it's you follow here, you go here, they ask questions, and then Sherlock solves it. And you're like, well, I could have never solved that in a million years because I don't have any of that information unless I know it beforehand, which is the point. I know I'm not.
No.
But like they're not like, they don't feel like real stories to me for the most part because they're just like snippets. Yeah, and this one is very similar where it's like, okay, here's this, here's the queen, here's this. I deduced it, but it's a little better. Right?
Right. Well, I would say that's a legitimate complaint. It's not quite as bad as Agatha Christie, but
What?
Agatha Christie, she is way worse about it. But I mean, there's a couple little hints, like a tall person was smoking a pipe and there was two men in the room and all this kind of stuff. So there's kind of a little hint, but yeah, he just Deus ex machinas the ending, like most of the stories, except that Sherlock, he's like, boom, and you're like, what?
Yeah,
No.
well, and that's a true Sherlock Holmes thing. It was just, it doesn't make a good story for the most part because there's no.
Most mysteries are like that. I mean, I like mysteries, so I'm fine. I never want to try and figure out the mystery before the end of the book. This is like totally a personality thing, but it's a 100% legitimate complaint, and it does happen in this book. Happens in most Sherlock Holmes stories. And like I said, Agatha Christie's another one who does it all the time. So, any final thoughts on our short story project for the month of May?
Yeah, here's one of those. I got one of those chapter headings pulled up for you.
Oh, okay.
There you go. This is from chapter 4. Liver complaints, bilious attacks, neurasthenic disturbances, quinsy, arthritis. These are just a handful of the complaints for which a professional exsanguination can be the remedy. In our offices, we have sheaves of testimonials, which can be inspected by the public at any time. Do not put your health in the hands of amateurs. We have been doing this for a very long time. V. Tepes, professional exsanguinator. Remember, it's pronounced Sepesh. Romania, Paris, London, Whitby. You've tried the rest. Now try the best. Just being a play to Vlad Tepes, Dracula, it's stuff like that.
Yeah,
so yeah,
it's hilarious.
They're funny. They're all like that.
So vampires were not an actual thing that we know of. But they really did bleed people. I mean, that was a thing that happened. You're sick. Let's just, let some blood out. That'll work. Other thoughts?
Short stories are good, but I like novels better.
I like short stories better. We have to fight now.
I'll win. I've got bigger books on my side to hit you with.
I have a large number of short stories. We can surround you.
Well, I'm just going to be the peacemaker and say I like them both. It depends on what I'm looking for. So, Chesky, do you have a shameless plug for us?
Sure. You can find me on the Libromancy podcast. I read and review books and usually just talk about how great they are. So,
unless you get mad occasionally.
Unless I get mad, yeah.
I think I've heard one where you were not mad, just.
It's more of a disappointed, like, this book could have been so much better, and it wasn't.
That's the worst, though. It's like when your dad looks at you and say, I'm not angry. I'm just really disappointed. I have a podcast we release every other Thursday called Wordless with formerly Aridandus on Green Team and now Mark, and we review short stories and novellas. So this concludes our episode. Our music is Galactic Damages by Jingle Pugs. You can find us on the Legendarium Discord. The invite link is on legendarium.com. We are also on Twitter at Green Team Pod. Join us in supporting the Legendarium via Patreon. Thank you, Craig, for loaning us a little corner of your media empire, and a shout out to Horizon Brave for starting it all. Thank you, Chesky.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Star.
Thank you.
And for Green Team, I'm Little Red Book. Until next time, bye.
Bye. Time to sing the song, do da do da.
Sorry about that.
You are forgiven this time.
Don't drink large Dr. Peppers before starting your podcasting.